In the grand ballroom of the Pierre, the air was filled with the scent of expensive champagne and that distinctive New York Upper East Side flavor, a mix of ambition and vanity. As the star of the evening and the founder of the Leo Future Foundation, I, Catherine Wu, was holding a glass of almost untouched sparkling wine, standing under the massive crystal chandelier, wearing that unchanging smile described by Vogue as impeccable. But my fingers holding the wine glass are growing cold. The hour hand pointed to 8:15 in the evening. My husband, Julian Thorne, the founder of Thorne Technology, was already a full 45 minutes late. For a charity gala held in his son's name, this wasn't just impolite, it was a display of power, a silent humiliation. The socialites around me, who usually called me sister, were now half, covering their mouths with fans, their eyes lingering on me. I knew that look all too well. It was pity wrapped in velvet, stinging like needles. "Is Julian tied up with that merger case?" A director's wife wearing this season's Chanel haute couture leaned over, her tone probing. After all, everyone in Silicon Valley is saying Thorne Tech has been making big moves lately. I gently swirled my wine glass, letting the amber liquid spin against the sides, masking the coldness in my eyes. You know him. Work always comes first. It was a lie. I knew where he was, and I knew who he was with. But what I didn't expect was for him to be this crazy enough to tear away the last shred of our dignity on a night like this. Just then, the heavy gilded double doors of the banquet hall were shoved open by a server. The originally noisy hall instantly went quiet for a second, and then that silence spread like a wave, only to be replaced by whispers that were more hushed, yet somehow even more deafening. I turned around, my gaze cutting through the layers of the crowd to land on the entrance. Julian Thorne stood there, dressed in a perfectly tailored dark Tom Ford suit, his tie knotted meticulously. On that handsome face that had once made Wall Street and me fall for him, hung that arrogant smile of total control. But he wasn't alone. There was a woman on his arm. If it were just an ordinary woman, even a Hollywood star, tonight's situation might have been glossed over as a PR crisis. But that woman was Bella, his PR director who'd been promoted less than half a year ago. The damning part was the dress she was wearing. It was an extremely flamboyant scarlet silk gown, the back almost double hash, with the hem spreading out on the carpet like fresh blood. In a setting like the Pierre Hotel, which values old-school propriety, this outfit was like a scream, vulgar, glaring, and full of provocation. My pupils constricted sharply. That was no ordinary dress. That was the design sketch I saw 3 months ago in a hidden folder on Julian's so-called work iPad. It was the Triumph Red he had specially commissioned from a Paris atelier for the most important woman in his life, to celebrate the 3rd anniversary of Thorne Tech going public. At the time, I thought it was a surprise for me. Now it was worn on another woman's body, walking right towards me. Bella's young, taut skin glowed white against that touch of red. She showed not the slightest hint of stage fright. Instead, under the full view of the crowd, she pressed her body even closer to Julian, as if he were her trophy. Her gaze pierced through the crowd, accurately capturing mine, and the corners of her mouth curled into a smile that looked innocent, but was actually filled with a malicious sense of superiority. At that moment, I heard the edifice in my heart named Perfect Marriage let out the first crisp crack before its collapse. I wanted to laugh. Is this my Yale Law School graduate self-proclaimed elite husband? Is this the man who told me we need to uphold family values to stabilize the stock price? He is simply stupid beyond belief. I didn't move. I stood in place like an elegant statue watching this reckless man and woman walk step by step up to me. "Sorry, Catherine." Julian's voice was deep and magnetic, but there wasn't a shred of apology in his eyes, only a habitual, condescending perfunctoriness. "There was a sudden PR emergency at the company, and Bella needs to follow up at any time, so I brought her along. For this kind of occasion, one more person adds more strength, doesn't it? What a perfect excuse. A PR crisis. Bella released Julian's arm at just the right moment, but then immediately made a show of straightening his tie, which wasn't even crooked. Then she turned to me, her voice so sickly sweet it was nauseating. "Miss Wu." "Oh no, Mrs. Thorne, Julian insisted I come. He said this gown would only not go to waste at an occasion like this. You don't mind, do you? After all, it's for the company's image." She called me Miss Wu before correcting herself. She was reminding me that in this relationship, I was already an outsider. She even deliberately turned around, displaying that backless design and the necklace sparkling with diamond light along the groove of her spine. That necklace was also the one I had seen in that folder. The gazes around us hit the three of us like a spotlight. Someone had already taken out a phone, and I knew without looking that tomorrow's New York Post gossip column had its headline. I looked at Bella, looking at that face of hers with "I won" written all over it. What does she think this is? A palace drama? A game of fighting for favor? No, Bella. This is Wall Street. This is a meat grinder of profit. What you're wearing isn't haute couture. It's evidence of a breach of contract. I was just about to speak when a small figure playing on the other side of the lobby suddenly charged over like a cannonball. "Mommy, Daddy!" It was Leo, my son who'd just turned 3. He was wearing a miniature tuxedo, hair slicked back, looking like a little gentleman. He broke past the nanny and ran straight to hug Julian's thigh. My heart tightened. I didn't want the child to see this. It was too dirty. But it was already too late. Leo hugged Julian's leg and looked up, his big eyes, so much like Julian's, filled with curiosity. He looked at Dad, then at that auntie beside him in the red dress, who smelled so fragrant. Then he reached out his chubby little finger and pointed straight at the unique embroidered family crest pattern on Bella's dress. It was the Thorne family crest, which Julian had once been proud of. The whole scene instantly fell silent. Everyone pricked up their ears, waiting for the reaction of this young son of the wealthy family. Leo blinked his eyes and shouted with that crisp and extremely penetrating voice that only children have. "Dad, the drawing on this auntie is the same as the drawing in that secret notebook inside the safe in your study. It's the one you hold and look at every night." Boom dash dash. The sound was even louder than the sound of the door being pushed open just now. If just moments ago it was merely everyone's unspoken speculation, then now that fig leaf had been not only torn off by a 3-year-old in front of the entire New York elite, but also thrown on the ground and stomped on a couple of times. Safe. Secret notebook. Looks at it every night. Put together, these words had the destructive power of a nuclear bomb. The smile on Bella's face froze instantly. That look of smugness seemed like it had been frozen by liquid nitrogen and then shattered, turning into comical panic. And Julian, my always composed husband, saw his face turn livid in that instant. His hand froze in mid-air, appearing to want to cover his son's mouth, but he stopped himself abruptly. Gasps rang out all around, followed immediately by snickering and whispering that could no longer be held back. Those phones were held up even higher. I watched the sudden panic in Julian's eyes, and a cold, unprecedented sense of pleasure rose within me. "Is this the PR you wanted, Julian? Since you like putting on a show so much, I'll help you bring this play to its climax." I didn't scream like a bitter woman, nor did I cry like a weakling. I slowly set down my wine glass. The base of the glass hit the table, letting out a crisp ding. I walked forward, bent down, and scooped Leo into my arms. He was a bit scared by the weird atmosphere around us and buried his head in the crook of my neck. I gently patted his back, then straightened up, looking at Julian and Bella with a gaze so cold it was almost cruel. My voice wasn't loud, but in the dead silent hall, it traveled clearly into everyone's ears. "Julian, since you have a more important private collection to show off, it seems there's no need for tonight's charity gala to continue." I I didn't wait for him to speak. I turned directly to the MC standing aside, who was already dumbfounded, and snatched the microphone from his hand. "Distinguished guests," my voice was steady, without a single tremor. "I'm terribly sorry, but due to Mr. Thorne experiencing a sudden, regrettable moral crisis, in order to protect the physical and mental well-being of the minors, tonight's event is ending early. I will match all donations double in my personal name. Now, please do as you wish." After saying that, I tossed the microphone back to the MC. The piercing feedback sound produced in that instant made everyone present flinch. Holding Leo, I turned and walked away. "Catherine, are you crazy? Stop right there!" Julian's exasperated low growl rang out behind me. I didn't look back. Stepping in 10-centimeter red-soled high heels, my spine ramrod straight, I strode through the path the crowd automatically parted to make, like a queen who had just pronounced a death sentence, walking out of this nauseating Vanity Fair. Behind me was the banquet hall, now a chaotic mess, and Julian Thorne, who had been thoroughly reduced to a laughingstock. The door of the Maybach shut out all the noise from the outside world. The driver, old Chen, was an old hand who had been with me for 5 years. He glanced at my pale face in the rearview mirror and silently raised the partition between the front and back seats. The only sound left in the cabin was Leo's faint breathing. He seemed to sense something, gripping my fingers tightly as he asked in a small voice, "Mommy, did I say something wrong? Daddy looks so scary." I lowered my head, looking at my son's innocent face by the light of the neon signs flashing past the window. My heart felt like it was being ruthlessly gripped by a giant invisible hand, hurting so much I could barely breathe. But I couldn't cry, at least not now. "No, Leo." I kissed his forehead, my voice so gentle that even I was surprised. "You're an honest child. Being honest is never wrong. It was Daddy who did something wrong." "Then who was that lady in the red dress?" "She is a thief," I said softly. "She stole things that didn't belong to her. But that doesn't matter anymore because Mommy is going to take back everything that belongs to us." The car drove onto Park Avenue, and a cold rain began to fall in New York. Raindrops beat against the car windows like countless urgent drumbeats, hammering on my tight nerves. Back at the penthouse, Maria the nanny immediately came to greet me, taking the already drowsy Leo from my arms. "Take him to sleep. No matter what noise you hear, don't come out," I instructed. Maria looked at the gown on me, which was still magnificent, but looked exceptionally lonely, and seemed to understand something. She nodded in a panic, held the child close, and hurried up to the second floor. The living room was empty, with only the massive floor-to-ceiling windows reflecting the twisted lights and shadows of Manhattan in the rainy night. This used to be the home I meticulously decorated. Every piece of furniture, every painting was chosen by me to cater to Julian's taste. Now it looked like a giant cold display case exhibiting a corpse named Marriage. I took off my high heels and stepped barefoot onto the expensive Persian carpet. The soft texture didn't bring me a shred of comfort. I walked over to the liquor cabinet, poured a glass of strong whiskey, and downed it in one gulp. The biting liquid burned down my throat, bringing a sliver of heat to my brain amidst its extreme calm. Then I took out my phone and dialed a number. "David, it's me." "Yes. Initiate Plan B. I mean immediately. Freeze the joint accounts and submit all the documents I asked you to prepare to the court. Also, notify those old geezers on the board. I'm calling an emergency meeting for 9 o'clock tomorrow morning." Hanging up the phone, I checked my watch. From the Pierre Hotel to here is a 20-minute drive with normal traffic. Julian should be here soon. Sure enough, 5 minutes later, the hurried sound of the fingerprint lock unlocking came from the entryway. The door was shoved open violently, carrying a gust of damp rage. Julian stormed in. His tie was already loosened, his hair a bit messy, and that elite facade of his looked utterly wretched right now. Bella wasn't behind him. It seemed he wasn't stupid enough to bring that woman home. Catherine Wu! He roared my full name, his voice echoing through the hall. Do you have any idea what you did tonight? You destroyed a whole year's worth of PR efforts for the company. Have you thought about how much our stock price is going to tank this week? You're an absolute madwoman. See? This is my husband. In his eyes, his wife's dignity and his son's trauma aren't worth as much as that damn stock price. I sat in the armchair, twirling that empty wine glass in my hand, watching him go crazy with a cold stare. I ruined the company? I chuckled lightly. Julian, a brain is a good thing. I hope you still have some left. The one who brought that woman, wearing that dress, to appear at your son's birthday party was you. The one who brought a mistress in front of his lawful wife in public using a lame excuse like PR crisis was also you. As for the stock price? That's just the market's reasonable valuation of an idiot like you who can't keep it in his pants. Julian choked for a moment at my attitude. He was probably used to my docility as a good wife and loving mother these past few years, used to me swallowing my anger for the greater good. He had never seen this sharp side of me, the Catherine Wu who used to slay at the M&A negotiation tables. He took a deep breath, trying to regain his rhythm, and started using his usual gaslighting tricks. Catherine, you're too sensitive. That was just work. Bella is young and doesn't know better. She wore the wrong clothes. That was just a coincidence. As for Leo, what does a child know? Kids speak without filter. Everyone would have just laughed it off. It's you. You're the one who had to blow things out of proportion, who had to grab that microphone and speak. You're the one who made it awkward for everyone. He closed in on me step by step, his eyes filled with accusation, as if I were the one who cheated. You've become unreasonable and paranoid now. Is it because I won't let you interfere in company affairs that you've gone crazy from boredom at home? I told you long ago, you just need to be content being Mrs. Thorne, responsible for looking pretty and attending charity galas. Why do you have to make such a fuss? I looked at his familiar face and suddenly felt a wave of nausea. I stood up without shrinking back in the slightest, but instead took 2 steps towards him. Although I wasn't as tall as him, my presence at this moment completely overpowered his. Since you think I've gone crazy from boredom, then let's talk about serious business. From the coffee table drawer behind me, I took out that thick brown paper envelope I had prepared long ago and slammed it hard against his chest. With a smack, the envelope hit the floor, and several photos and documents slid out. The photos showed scenes of him in Paris, in Milan, in Bali, kissing, holding hands, and going in and out of hotels with Bella. High definition, uncensored. And that document. What is this? Julian looked down at it, his face instantly turning from angry to deathly pale. This is your work requirement, I said coldly. These are the statements showing Bella used company funds to purchase luxury goods and pay for private vacations over the past 6 months. This is the title deed to that apartment in Lower Manhattan purchased under a shell company. And this, in accordance with Article 14 of our prenuptial agreement, the asset reallocation clause triggered by marital infidelity, along with legal documents proving that Thorntech's core algorithm patent was originally registered by me. With every sentence I spoke, Julian took a step back. You investigated me? He looked at me in disbelief. You knew all along? Julian, I am a lawyer. I was, I am, and I always will be. I looked at him, the last trace of warmth disappearing from my eyes. Just because I haven't taken cases these past few years doesn't mean I've forgotten how to gather evidence. Did you really think I spent every day at home just picking flower arrangements and selecting menus? I bent down and picked up the top document. It was the divorce agreement. Sign it, Julian. I want 30% of Thorntech's shares, this apartment, the villa in the Hamptons, and full custody of Leo. It's impossible for you to walk away with nothing. After all, I can't afford that kind of embarrassment. But I will make you understand that the price of betraying me is far more expensive than that pitiful stock price of yours. Julian stared dead at the agreement, his hands trembling. 30%? You're crazy. This will cost me controlling interest. The board will kill me. That's your problem. I turned around, no longer looking at him. Now get out of my house. Your lawyer will receive a formal summons tomorrow. Oh, by the way, that is a copy of the bill for that dress Bella bought. Remember to make her pay it back. After all, that is embezzlement. Catherine, you can't do this. We're husband and wife, he roared from behind. Used to be, I replied coldly. Now, we are plaintiff and defendant. Julian was escorted out by the apartment's security. When two tall security guards politely yet firmly held him by the arms and pushed him out of the elevator, he hadn't even had time to change out of that expensive rain-soaked suit. He was yelling and screaming in the hallway like a giant baby deprived of candy, completely devoid of the dignity of a tech upstart he usually possessed. I stood in front of the monitor, watching him locked out of the building, angrily kicking a roadside trash can in the pouring rain, finally having to hunch his neck and duck into the long, waiting taxi, because I had already remotely locked his Maybach. The world was finally quiet. I leaned against the wall and let out a long breath. This battle was a beautiful win, but it also drained all my strength. But I knew this was just the beginning. The real war would only break out the moment the stock market opened tomorrow. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at that wide oak desk in the study. That was the spot Julian used to sit, but now it belonged to me. I turned on the computer and connected to the encrypted cloud server. The cold glow of the screen shone on my face. I started sending emails to my allies. The first one went to old Jack, the second largest shareholder of Thorn Tech, an old fox who's always despised Julian's dictatorial ways. I know he's been eyeing the chairman's seat for a long time. Dear Jack, regarding that management risk assessment we discussed last week, I think it's time to restart it now. Attached is some evidence of financial irregularities, enough for you to initiate a motion of no confidence at tomorrow's board meeting. My voting rights can be temporarily entrusted to you. The second one went to the Wall Street Journal's senior reporter, Sarah, my law school classmate. Scoop, tech upstart suspected of using company funds to keep a mistress and facing a core patent lawsuit. The chain of evidence is complete. Send it to me to review before 8 a.m. tomorrow. I want the front page. The third one, sent to my mentor, the top divorce litigation lawyer in the country, Robert. Teacher, the case is here. Just as you predicted, this isn't just a divorce lawsuit, it's a battle for equity. I need your team to fully intervene. After sending these 3 emails, the horizon was already turning the pale white of dawn. I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. The rain had stopped, and the Manhattan skyline revealed a cold, hard silhouette in the morning light. Central Park sat like a huge emerald inlaid in the concrete forest, quiet and solemn. I looked at my reflection in the window pane. That woman in silk pajamas still had fatigue in her eyes, but there was more of a newfound sharpness. I thought back to 3 years ago, when to support Julian's startup, I resigned from my position as a partner at the firm, took out my entire trust fund, and even sold the old apartment on the Upper West Side my mother left me as his angel investment. Back then, he said, "Catherine, this company is our shared child." Now it seems that was nothing more than a meticulously designed Ponzi scheme, swindling away my youth, money, and trust. But he forgot one thing. Since I could make a Julian Thorn, I can destroy him. I can even make a new one. That is myself. I walked into the bathroom and turned on the shower. Hot water washed over my body. I looked at myself in the mirror and picked up the scissors. That long curly hair, kept for 5 years to cater to Julian's preferences, fell to the floor with a snip-snip sound. Looking at that woman with the sharp short hair in the mirror, I smiled. This is Catherine Wu. Not anyone's wife, not anyone's mother, just myself. 8 o'clock in the morning. When the first ray of sunlight shone into the penthouse, my phone started vibrating like crazy. News push notifications came one after another. Thorn Tech founder, deep in scandal, affair with female subordinate, suspected financial fraud. Stock plunges 15% pre-market, board holds emergency meeting. Mysterious lawyer Catherine Wu, the real mastermind surfaces? I didn't answer any calls, especially Julian's, who was practically blowing up my phone. I changed into a sharp white suit and put on the purest red lipstick. That was the color of battle. I pushed open the door to the child's room. Leo was already awake, sitting on the bed, rubbing his eyes. "Mommy, where are we going?" he asked in a baby voice. I walked over, picked him up, went to the window, and pointed at the bustling Manhattan outside. "Leo, we are going to take back the castle that belongs to us." "What about Daddy?" "Daddy?" I smiled, gazing at the Thorn Tech building standing near Times Square in the distance, which was right in the center of the storm at that moment. Daddy has to pay the price for the wrong things he did, and us, we are going to start a new life. Holding my son, I turned and walked out of the apartment. The elevator doors slowly closed. This time, it wasn't an escape. It was going to war. Thorn Tech's headquarters is located in an all-glass skyscraper at the south end of Times Square, that totem of power Julian is most proud of. At this very moment, this totem is being besieged by media with their long lenses and microphones, packed so tight that not even a drop of water could trickle through. And as for me, I wasn't hiding away weeping as the public expected, nor was I storming in with a team of lawyers looking for blood. I sat in a private club just 2 blocks from the Thorn building, enjoying my Eggs Benedict and Earl Grey tea. It's members only here, quiet and private, a whole different world from the clamor outside. Sitting across from me was old Jack. This gray-haired investor was methodically cutting his steak, yet his gaze was as sharp as a hawk's. "Catherine, that was a killer move." Jack swallowed a mouthful of meat and elegantly wiped the corner of his mouth with a napkin. "Julian is like a trapped beast in a cage right now. The board has gone ballistic, especially after seeing that patent ownership document disclosed in the Wall Street Journal this morning." I set down my teacup and gave a faint smile. "Jack, this isn't just about revenge. You know that if the patent ownership issues regarding Thorn Tech's core algorithms aren't resolved, the next funding round will never pass the audit. I'm doing this for the good of the company." "Ha, for the good of the company." Jack laughed aloud, the wrinkles at the corners of his eyes smoothing out. "I like your phrasing, but what I'm more concerned about is, when do you plan to pull in the net? The stock price has already fallen below the issue price. If it drops any further, all of our assets are going to shrink. Don't rush." I glanced at my watch. "It's not time yet. I want Julian to thoroughly understand that without me, he is nothing. This kind of fear needs time to ferment." Just then, the club manager hurried over and whispered to me, "Mrs. Thorne, there is a Miss Chin at the front desk who says she must see you. She looks very agitated." "Chin Shui? Bella?" I raised an eyebrow. It seems this PR director has finally realized that she messed with the wrong person. "Let her in." I nodded to the manager. "However, search her first. I don't want there to be any recording devices." A few minutes later, Bella appeared before us. She'd obviously had a terrible night. That flashy red dress from last night was gone, replaced by a plain business suit. She wore no makeup, had dark circles under her eyes, and her hair was tied back carelessly. The woman who had been so insufferably arrogant last night now looked like a drowned rat. Seeing Jack sitting across from me, she froze for a moment. A trace of fear flashed through her eyes, but she braced herself and walked up to me. "Catherine, Miss Wu." Her voice was hoarse. "Let's talk." "Talk about what?" I didn't even lift my eyes, continuing to spread butter on the bread. "Talk about how you embezzled public funds to buy bags? Or talk about how you helped Julian cook the books?" "Julian made me do all that," Bella screamed, her voice sounding particularly piercing in the quiet restaurant. "He said it was to maintain client relations. He said as long as he was around, this money was nothing at all. I'm innocent." "Innocent?" Jack scoffed. Miss Chin, as the company's second-largest shareholder, I can tell you clearly that any expenditure over $500,000 without board approval is a violation. And your bills for this past half year, tisk tisk, enough to have you sewing clothes in federal prison for quite a few years. Bella's face instantly turned deathly pale. Her legs went weak, and she nearly fell to her knees. She stared dead at me, her eyes finally revealing true fear. Catherine, please. I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have messed with you, shouldn't have worn that dress. I can leave Julian. I can leave New York. As long as you drop the lawsuit, as long as you don't hand these over to the prosecutor. I looked at her, just like looking at a cockroach struggling under the sole of a shoe. Bella, you've got one thing wrong. I stood up slowly, walked over to her, and looked down at her. I'm not targeting you. You're just a pustule on the festering sore that is Julian. Popping you is just to make this sore heal a bit faster. As for whether you go to jail, that depends on whether you can be a useful witness for me. Bella snapped her head up. Witness? Right. I took a business card out of my bag. It was Lawyer Roberts' card. Go find this person. Hand over all the evidence you have regarding Julian's financial irregularities, bribery of officials, and asset transfers to him. If you do it thoroughly enough, maybe I'll consider putting in a good word with the prosecutor to let you turn state's witness. Bella took the card trembling, her eyes struggling. She knew this meant completely betraying Julian, meant she would no longer have a footing in this circle. You have 10 minutes to consider. I checked my watch. In 10 minutes, my lawyer will formally submit the materials to the prosecutor's office. By then, you will be the primary defendant. These words shattered her final psychological defense. I'll do it! I'll do it! She broke down, wailing. When he kicked me out last night, he even threatened that if I dared to open my mouth, he'd kill me. He doesn't love me at all. He only loves himself. I looked at the woman crying bitterly in front of me, and my heart remained completely unmoved. This is reality. There is no such thing as invincible true love, only flying apart when disaster strikes. Good. I turned to Jack and said, looks like we can close the net early. 10 a.m., Thorn Tech main conference room. The long conference table was filled with directors and shareholders wearing grave expressions. The atmosphere was so oppressive, it was suffocating. Julian sat at the head seat, looking like he had been drained of all vitality. Overnight, it was as if he had aged 10 years. That expensive suit hung crumpled on his body, and his stubble was dark. He stared dead at a cup of cold coffee in front of him, his hand trembling uncontrollably. When Jack and I walked into the conference room side by side, everyone's eyes focused on me. I specifically wore a white suit today, with a sharp cut, paired with my newly trimmed short hair, appearing capable and imposing, worlds apart from that accessory who always smiled and nodded behind Julian. Catherine, this isn't a charity gala. Julian looked up, his voice hoarse and his gaze sinister. This is the company board meeting. Unauthorized people aren't allowed in. Irrelevant outsider? I sneered, slamming a file onto the table and casually pulling out the chair opposite him to sit down. Julian, did you forget? According to that co-founder agreement you hid at the bottom of the safe, but which remains legally binding, I hold a one-vote veto over the company's major decisions. Furthermore, I scanned the circle of directors present, my gaze lingering on every single face. I hold ironclad proof that the patent rights to the company's core technology belong to me. If I don't give the nod, starting tomorrow, all of Thorn Tech's products will face infringement lawsuits, and the stock in your hands will turn into waste paper. These words were like a double asterisk, ###, detonating in the conference room. What? The patent rights are in her hands? God, Julian never mentioned this. This is fraud. This is fraud against the investors. The directors began whispering among themselves, their angry gazes shooting toward Julian like arrows. She's lying! Julian slammed the table and stood up abruptly, veins bulging on his forehead. That is marital property. That was developed by us together. She signed a waiver long ago. A waiver? My lips curled into a mocking arc. Are you talking about that document you coaxed me into signing when I had just given birth to Leo and wasn't even lucid? Regrettably, Julian, that document is invalid under New York state law due to procedural violations and gross unfairness. Moreover, I snapped my fingers. The door to the conference room opened again, and Robert the lawyer walked in with Bella, who had completely broken down. Bella kept her head down, afraid to look at Julian, clutching a folder tightly in her hands. What's the meaning of this? Julian saw Bella, and a flash of fear passed through his eyes. It means your good days are over. Jack spoke up, knocking on the table. Julian, in view of the current PR crisis, financial scandals, and patent disputes, as a board member, I formally propose the removal of Julian Thorne as CEO and the freezing of all his company-related privileges to cooperate with the internal investigation. I second as well. Seconded. Hands went up one after another. Those partners who had once been so deferential to Julian now chose to abandon him without hesitation. In the face of profit, friendship isn't worth a dime. Julian watched this unfold, his body swaying before he slumped back into his chair. He looked at Bella, his voice trembling. "You're betraying me too?" Bella looked up, her eyes full of tears and hatred. "You abandoned me first, Julian. Last night you said I was useless, said you were going to pin everything on me. I'm just protecting myself." Julian pointed at her, wanting to curse but unable to get the words out. Finally, he turned to me, his eyes full of pleading. It was the despair of someone at the end of their rope. "Catherine, let's talk. In private. I'm the child's father. You can't do this to me. If I go to prison, what about Leo? He'll have a criminal for a father. He's threatening me with our son." I stood up, propped my hands on the table, leaned forward, and stared straight into his eyes. "Julian, when you showed up at Leo's birthday party with that woman, you were already unworthy of being his father. As for a criminal father? I'll tell Leo that his father is a cautionary tale of someone who lost himself to desire. This will be the most valuable lesson of his life." After saying this, I turned to the board. "Everyone, my legal team has prepared an acquisition plan. I will acquire the remaining shares in Julian's hands in my own name and inject capital into the company to help Thorntech weather this crisis. The only condition is Julian Thorne must be completely out." "Catherine, this is robbery!" Julian roared in despair. "No, my dear." I straightened my collar, resuming an elegant smile. "This is called cutting losses." 1 month later. The Hampton sea breeze carried a distinctive salty tang, blowing against this white seaside villa. Sunlight spilled onto the lawn where Leo was running on the grass with his golden retriever, his laughter drifting far with the sea breeze. I sat on the wicker chair on the terrace, holding a glass of iced lemonade in my hand, with the latest issue of Time magazine on my knees. The person on the cover is me. The title is in bold, "Rebirth from the Fire, Catherine Wu and Her Business Empire." A lot has happened this past month. Julian has been formally charged on suspicion of embezzlement and commercial bribery. Although currently out on bail, he's been restricted from leaving the country and faces a prison sentence of up to 10 years. His reputation is completely ruined, and those friends who used to surround him are avoiding him like the plague. After Thorntech experienced a brief period of stock price volatility, thanks to my capital injection and a series of decisive reform measures, the stock price not only rebounded, but even set a new high. The market showed unprecedented confidence in a strong, clear-headed female leader with a background in core technology. As for Bella, even though she turned state's witness and avoided a heavy sentence, her credibility was bankrupt, so she was blacklisted by the entire industry. I heard she's already gone back to her hometown with her tail between her legs. Everything is heading in the right direction. "Mom, look!" Leo ran over, holding up a beautiful seashell in his hand. "For you!" I took Bella, my heart filled with warmth. This is what life should be like. No lies, no betrayal, only real sunshine and love. Just then, the phone on the table started vibrating. It was an unfamiliar number. I hesitated for a moment, then answered the call. "Catherine." A hoarse, dejected voice came from the other end of the phone. It was Julian. "Do you need something? If it's about the legal fees, please contact my assistant directly." My tone was so calm, it was like I was speaking to a stranger. "No, I want to see Leo. It's the weekend, according to the agreement." "According to the agreement, only after you pass the drug test and psychological evaluation and are accompanied by a social worker can you apply for visitation." I interrupted him coldly. "As far as I know, you failed last week's drug test. You're drinking, Julian." There was silence on the other end of the phone for a long time, only the sound of heavy breathing coming through. "Catherine, I regret it." His voice was choked with sobs. "I really regret it. If I hadn't taken Bella along that night, would we still be together now? Would I still be sitting on that terrace watching Leo play?" I looked at the shimmering sea in the distance, yet surprisingly, felt not a single ripple in my heart. "Julian, life has no what-ifs. That was your own choice. The moment you chose betrayal, you already lost the right to sit here." "But I love you. I've always loved you." "No, you only love yourself. You only love the Catherine who could unconditionally support you and make you look good. But that Catherine is dead, killed by your own hands." I paused and finally said, "Don't call again. Let's leave some final dignity for each other. Goodbye, Mr. Thorne." I hung up the phone and blocked the number. In the distance, Leo was shouting to me, "Mom, come quick, let's build a sandcastle." "Coming," I replied, put down my phone, took off my shoes, and ran barefoot toward the sunlit grass. Behind me, the phone screen slowly went dark, sealing that unbearable past into the darkness along with it. And before me was the vast ocean, the free wind, and a future of infinite possibilities.